Hi, I'm Gary White for Central Kentucky Television. I'm here with State Representative Terry Mills for the 24th District, which includes Marion County, as well as Greene County and LaRue County. And you're starting a new term this month, right?
We were sworn in. We've been in the House chamber 4 days so far of the 30. And one of those, the first day was swearing us in. So yes, on January the 6th, I believe it was, we were officially sworn in for another term. Covering 2015 and ending the end of 2016.
So for 2 more years. And how many terms is this now for you?
This will be, if I finish the next 2 years, it'll be 3 1/2.
Okay.
As you recall, I came in the half of a term, and then this would be my 3rd full term.
Okay.
Full term being 2 years.
Okay, great. So we're going to talk about what's coming up in this legislative session. So this is a short session for the legislature, right?
It is. In odd-numbered years, we meet for 30 days, and in even-numbered years, we meet for 60 days. The biggest difference is in the 60-day sessions, we do the state's biennial budget.
Right.
And that is not 30 days consecutive, it's 30 work days. So our sine die, the day we finish, will be March 24th. So between now and March 24th, we'll be in the session on the House floor, passing laws or whatever we do
Debating
there.
anyway.
Debating, and for 26 more days.
26, okay.
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to get into some of the different laws that are being proposed, some that may come up for a vote, some that you might be involved with. And let's start. I want to start off with one that recently I did an interview with several people from Marion County who are involved with the Smoke Free Kentucky organization, which is trying to get a law passed which prevents smoking indoor at public facilities. I think it's House Bill 145, I believe, that is proposed. Does that sound right?
That number doesn't sound right, but
okay.
I have to check. I'm thinking. I'm not.
Okay, but
sure.
it's the.
There is a House bill filed
right.
to ban smoking in public places in the state of Kentucky.
Okay. Yes. Now, this is the 4th year that this legislation has been proposed, but it's never been able to get out of committee before. But they're hopeful this year, because of a new committee that might be assigned to or something, that it will be proposed. Have you been hearing that? Or will it come up for a vote?
Yes, I think it's more likely than ever of any of the 4 years that it will come for a vote on the floor. I can't be sure of that because I don't control that part of it. There is a lot of support, growing support. Over half the states in the United States have enacted similar laws. And there's a very, very strong lobbying group. I was telling you before, I've been contacted by many, many, many lobbyists in favor of passing the smoke-free law. And my position on it at this point is still, to the displeasure of some, I still haven't made my mind up. I want to be sure that I hear from both sides of this issue before I cast a vote. And besides that, bills have amendments added in the process which can significantly alter the original bill. So I have not committed to how I'm going to vote for that. I'm still listening. I know some people feel in the extreme on both sides. There are some people adamant about passing the bill to make Kentucky a smoke-free place. There are some people believe it or not, there are some people just as adamant about not passing this law. And I think the Enterprise did an editorial this week, and I sort of laid out what I'm hearing on the other side of the smoke-free law, or from those people who are against it. And I want to give consideration to everybody. I take pride in being open-minded and listening to all sides of an argument. And I'll tell you, Gary, if anybody says really about anything in the legislature that it's a no-brainer, that it's a slam dunk, I'm sorry, after 5 years of being there, you're wrong. There's always another side. So nobody is arguing about the fact that smoking is bad for our health. The issue is not whether smoking is bad for our health or whether secondhand smoke is bad for our health. The evidence to me is clear that it is. the issue and the argument is about whether we need a law to ban smoking in public places in Kentucky. As I say, I could get into details. I don't know how much time we have, Gary.
Well,
but
I know some people were saying that they had spoken with some various different representatives, and there was a note that like 80% of either their constituency or the state is kind of saying that they're in favor of the bill.
In what I'm saying, in my survey, which was done last summer, I had a majority, about 80% of the people who said they were in favor of a smoke-free law in Kentucky. And I want to listen very much to those people. I think I sent out about 2,000 questionnaires and I got about 200 back, which is pretty typical when people have to pay postage, that you don't get a good return on those. But of those that responded, most people did say they want. And as you know, surveys, I've even heard some people say that they're getting just the opposite in surveys. Surveys you have to be careful about because the way the question is worded can lead people. So that's part of the information that I want to consider as I move forward in coming to a conclusion on how I need to vote on this bill. I believe the bill allows, so one of the strong, I'll mention a couple of the arguments against. One of the strong arguments against is a lot of people believe it should be a local decision. The city or county should decide. I'm not so sure about that. Smoking is pretty universal. The damage is pretty universal. A lot of people believe the business owners should decide whether to make their place smoke-free or not, and you get into a property rights issue. There will be some cost associated with the law. Technically, you could call a law officer if somebody doesn't smokes and breaks the law in a place, and you get into a lot of other administrative cost.
So there's some pros and cons.
There's some pros and cons. What I would, and I want to hear from people. I think the 800 number to contact us in the legislature. We've worked pretty hard to get that out there to people. There's a website, www.lrc.ky.gov, where you can weigh in on this issue. And at this point, I think it's critical that I hear from my constituents. So everywhere I go, I'm asking people to weigh in with me so that I can get a good feel for how my constituency feels, because that's why I'm there, is to represent the constituency. But let me assure you, as some would have you believe, it's not a slam dunk, it's not a no-brainer issue. There are two sides to that issue, and I want to give, for example, I want to hear from smokers. Sure, it's a legal activity, and what kind of feelings do they have about it? So yeah, that will be something. I believe it'll get a vote. I believe I'll have to vote on it, and I will vote on it. But I'm going to make sure that I've heard everything I possibly can hear about both sides of the issue before I cast a vote.
And as we said, it hasn't come out of committee yet, so this year there is belief it will, but we'll wait and see.
And that's my belief. That's a personal opinion of mine, which I do feel like the momentum is greater this year than in the past.
That's right. Okay. Yeah. So that's one issue that's been getting a lot of attention locally. We don't have the budget, fortunately, that we have to decide on this year, but there still are a lot of money issues as well that's going on out there. Are you hearing much about the pension concerns?
We're hearing a lot about pension concerns. The talk is that a proposal will be filed which will involve bonding to shore up the teachers' retirement system. The Kentucky Teachers Retirement System Board wants us to do that. They've started explaining that to us legislators during the past year. And as a general rule, I, like many others, don't like bonding or borrowing to solve problems. But if you consider the alternatives on the teachers' retirement system, I'd be open to consideration for favoring a plan that would involve bonding. There's some good reasons to do bonding right now. Interest rates are low. We in Kentucky are paying off some bonds that some people say we can take what we're saving on paying that and pay this to shore up that system. What I always tell teachers especially is your checks are secure. Don't worry about that. This is a long-term problem. It'll take a long-term solution. We will fix that problem. So, you know, not to keep our promises we've made to people who have taught our children for so many years would be a travesty, I think, and we're not going to let that happen.
So money's always a concern, but there are some ways to get that done. What are some of the other bills that you are hearing?
Well, I'll give a plug, I guess, for my two little bills I'm filing this year. I have this, I believe it's the 4th year in a row that I've filed a bill to create a fund to treat addictive gamblers. Having a pro-expanded gaming belief, I think I have an obligation to recognize what I call the dark side of expanded gaming. And right now in Kentucky, we don't consider addictive an addiction to gambling in the same way that we consider an addiction to some of the other evils, drinking and the other, you know, drug addictions. And so I've filed a bill, as I have the last 4 years, to create a fund, and it asks for money, which is the problem it has had in the past. But it would provide some training and some counselors to help those people who get addicted to gambling. Now, gambling, whether we pass expanded gaming or not, gambling is a big deal in Kentucky. It's just that right now, the money we're spending gaming, we're sending over to Indiana and now Ohio and other states. So anybody that says people in Kentucky don't have problem gaming, I believe don't see the full picture. So I've asked for that. Don't know where that'll go. There is one change in my status this year. I'm now on the Appropriations and Revenue Committee, which has puts me in a little better position to make arguments for ideas that take money. So don't know what will happen on that. The other thing I plan to file, I haven't actually.
Before you get to that, can I ask you a question on the monies that you're looking for that? Did you say where would that monies come out of?
It would come out of general fund. It asks for a general fund appropriation.
Okay.
So
it
would have to be in the next budget, and I believe it's about a $1.2 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not coming from the gaming industry.
No.
It's coming from the
no. We had in the past. I did file the bill to draw money from gaming funds, the lottery, for example, and they came out of the woodwork at me. They said I was taking money that they needed to run their operation. So we're trying it from a general fund request, and you know,
see where it goes.
See where it goes. That's about the best I can say. Another bill I plan to file next week is a bill that would allow a tax credit for employers who use handicapped and disabled workers. It would give a tax credit, I believe, up to $500,000 in the state for those employers. For example, some of the manufacturing facilities we have here in Lebanon. We just opened Marion County Industries, a new shop, which was greatly a huge expansion. Places like Goodwill, where they employ handicapped folks. And it would encourage and be an incentive for those businesses to hire those people, which I think is a good thing not only for Marion County, but it's a good thing for everybody all across Kentucky. It's a good thing for those disabled and handicapped people. So I'll be filing that. Don't know where it will go either, but
is that a new bill this year, or have you?
This will be a new bill. Actually, it's been filed before. I believe Representative Martha Jane King down at Logan County has filed it in the past. But the group promoting it came to me and asked me to file it, and it's something I want, and I see it as being good for my constituency in my district. So I plan to file that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're the two that you're kind of.
That's the two. Yeah, I don't have any earth-shattering bills or anything, but I'll be paying close attention and be involved in deciding whether to support or not to support particular issues. Well, if I may, do you have something else?
There was another discussion. I believe there's a bill with regards to charter schools, or potentially.
Yes.
What has been your feedback for people with regards to charter schools? And do you know any of the details on what that bill entails?
You know, I get very little feedback from people in my district about charter schools, pro or con. I don't think there's a lot of discussion in this area about it. There is lots of discussion statewide and nationally about it. As a general rule, if you have charter schools, you're creating another system of schools, actually. In my view, another bureaucracy. I don't like that. What I think we need to do is focus on making our public school system better. Now, do I support private schools? Absolutely. I support private schools. I'm just not sure that taxpayer funds should be used to further private schools. You know, the other thing about charter schools is some charter schools are run on a for-profit basis, and I am really opposed to making money off of teaching our kids. I just don't think that should be one of the objectives. I don't believe we should put that out there for making money on educating our children. I do know that, as a general rule, from the data I've seen, teachers, for example, in charter schools, in private school, make less than public school teachers.
Right.
And public school teachers a lot of times aren't paid what they, you know, what a lot of people believe they should be. So for those reasons, the profit making motive and the creating another bureaucracy, and let's use our energy to make our public schools, the schools that we support now, better, rather than I'm not a big charter school fan, but there is a bill. Representative Brad Montel from Shelbyville, good friend of mine, great guy, files it every year. And again, I'm generalizing, but that's one of the issues that, and some people may disagree with me on this, but generally Republicans like the idea, Democrats don't. The Republicans failed to take over the House last year, so probably charter school legislation won't be passed this year. Had the Republicans been able to take over the House, it probably had a good chance. I don't know what the governor would have done, but it certainly has merit, and we need, you know, we have a system now. A couple years ago, we passed a law to allow for our established school districts to develop alternate ways of running their schools, called districts of innovation. Right. But there's limits. But that was an attempt to put some element of some means in our system of dealing with the schools that aren't doing well, or the schools that maybe have special needs. So there's a lot of discussion about it. In summary, I don't hear much about it in my district, but I don't think charter school legislation will pass this year.
Another big discussion point too is the local tax option that has been kind of discussed, where it has to be an amendment, I believe. It would have to be passed by Congress, or by you guys, to go to the legislature, to go to an amendment. Yeah. Right. And can you tell us a little about what that is?
Yes, sir.
And if that's going to be coming up?
Yes, sir. The acronym that's been established for that is LIFT. L-I-F-T, Local Investments for Transformation, I believe that stands for. Those against it tend to refer to another acronym called LOST, which stands for something else. So, but clearly on that issue, there are two sides to that. But what it would do is allow local communities, such as the City of Lebanon or the County of Marion, to pass a local sales tax of up to 1%. Couldn't be any more than 1%. So that anything purchased in that locality would be subject to that 1% sales tax, just like the state sales tax that's applied on every purchase. The money...
It would be on top of current.
It would be on top, yes, it would be over the 6%. The money from that tax could only be used for capital projects in that community. You would have to decide what project the community wanted, and then pass the tax, and then pay for it with those funds. Once it's paid for, the legislation would say the tax goes away. In order to do all of that, the first thing, though, that has to be done is the Constitution has to be changed. And what we have before us this session is a bill which would add an amendment to the Constitution to allow this to happen, allow local communities to put a sales tax on. It couldn't go on the ballot until 2016. That's year after next. So if that's passed and it goes on the ballot year after next, then the people of Kentucky would decide whether to allow that. If the people allowed it, then enabling legislation would say exactly how it would work. So last year's enabling legislation, it was filed and didn't pass last year. Last year's enabling legislation required not only a fiscal court or a city council to vote on it, but to have public hearings and then take a vote of the citizenry before that tax could be imposed. So there really were some steps that had to be followed, and actually it makes it, the enabling legislation, if it's like it was last year, it makes it hard for it to pass. But it should be hard to pass, because we wouldn't want to do that unless we were sure people in the community wanted it. So yeah, that will come. I know the big cities are behind it. I know leadership in the House and the Senate are behind it, and usually if leadership in the House and the Senate is behind it, it's kind of like a freight train, and you know, you just go along. So I think it will probably pass.
To where it will be on the
putting it on the ballot. That's right. That's right. They've seemed to have agreed on that. So you know, I don't have any problem with that. It would allow local people to make the decision in the end, and that's the key to it, I think. So.
Right. So the first step is getting the legislation passed, then the amendment, and then.
Just to give you a little bit of the other side, there are what I call the no tax people out there who anything that looks like, could open the door to, smells like, appears to be in any form of tax, they are opposed to, and that's a relatively loud group. I do know the Kentucky Retailers Association is opposing it because it would add a burden to retailers to have to collect it and that kind of thing. And so there is some opposition. Again, like every issue, there's two sides to it. So, but I feel like it'll not only I feel like it'll pass this year. I think it probably will. Could be wrong, but that's the feeling I get.
Okay. Now you were going to say you had something else that you wanted to mention before we started going into these other bills.
It was that. It was the lift. That was it. Yeah. That
was lift bill. Okay. Any other ones that we need to become aware of?
Well, we're going to have medicinal marijuana will come up.
Right.
I'm skeptical that it will be passed, but there'll be some discussion about that.
Have you had much feedback on?
I get a lot of emails, but they're mostly from organizations and not from within my district. But I do hear from, and I encourage people to let me know pro or con. I believe the bill, I think Speaker Stumbo has filed a bill, and in it, it doesn't allow smoking of marijuana, but it allows the use of marijuana in other forms if a doctor prescribes it and if a condition, some of the conditions, you know, and again, when you hear about these children who have these major diseases that seemingly the only thing that helps them is the cannabis, the product derived from marijuana. I mean, that's a pretty compelling argument. A lot of states in the 20s now, I believe, have approved medicinal marijuana for use. So, you know, it's a definitely worthy of debate, and we'll hear some about that this year. So.
Right. And if you want to voice your opinion on any of these bills or any other bills that you're hearing, we have a 1-800 number that we'll give you that you can contact any of the legislators, including Representative Mills, but also you can contact Jimmy Higdon or any Senator Buford or whatever.
We get
David Floyd, whomever.
We get calls from people who call in and say, "I want this to go to every legislator," and every legislator gets it. And I promise to you and to your viewers that I read every one of those. I do read every one. Now, the ones I respond to are generally only the ones in my territory, because there'd just be too many to handle otherwise. But I want to assure people that if you call in, you are heard. And I use email a lot. And my email address is on the website and so forth. So
put that out there. And is there a lot of discussion, I assume, in Frankfort going on around the governor's race as well?
Yeah, you know, I always describe that as an elephant in every room. I'm not sure the elephant will it be more like a baby elephant, I think, this year, as opposed to previous years, or when, for example, there's a presidential election, or when all the House members are up. The elephant last year was a lot bigger than the elephant this year. All the House members were up for re-election last year. So now, if there is an elephant, it has to do with 2016 for House and Senate members. But the governor's race will be a factor. Yeah, yeah. There will be things done to make one candidate look good and maybe one candidate not, and those games will be played. But in the end, I think we'll have a good governor's race. And this being a short year, they'll have time to get out and campaign. And I don't see any major legislation being affected by the governor's race, though.
Okay. Well, again, I've been talking with State Representative Terry Mills, who represents Marion, Greene, and LaRue counties. This has been Gary White for Central Kentucky Television.